Magic is a word that encompasses a wide variety of topics, and it means vastly different things to different people. It typically defines behavior that is supernatural, often influenced by human will. In stories, magic is visibly real, with rules and spells that are concrete, constrained by tradition. Silent Hill is a series that is chock full of the supernatural. But magic as it's seen in most fiction is hard to define in this series. We don't see characters casting spells or waving wands, but we know magic has been performed, that rituals are conducted. What rules and traditions define these spells? What magic books and ancient tomes do the mages of Silent Hill use? In today's Halloween special, we're going to discuss the magic of Silent Hill, the actual spellcasting done by characters in-game, in order to try and define the cult's actions as its own school of magic and what its tools and rules might be. In the rebirth ending of Silent Hill 2, James makes the choice to try and resurrect his dead wife. The spell requires a few things, and those items, along with a few other details in Silent Hill 2, can tell us a lot about the spell he's crafting and the general magic of the town. To proceed, James has to have 4 items: the Crimson Ceremony and Lost Memories, both of which are books, and 2 more items called the White Chrism and the Obsidian Goblet. A chrism, otherwise known as myrrh, is a consecrated oil used in sacraments in many Christian denominations. It is the holy oil that is often seen being pressed into a believer's forehead. In Silent Hill, it's presumed through notes and a few clues that the White Chrism is made from White Claudia, the flower which is also used to make the drug PTV and the Aglaophotis. Speaking of, Aglaophotis is the name of a real flower. Well, not a real one, but a mythical flower mentioned in medieval manuscripts as being a type of peony that could defend against demons and witchcraft. White Claudia is a flower that grows along the water, whose seeds are hallucinogenic. The name Claudia comes from the Greek claudus, meaning crippled or lame, possibly implying that these seeds would make one physically weak or incapable of movement. The substances that White Claudia creates are all apparently magical and seem to protect against the other world. Aglaophotis protects Alessa and Heather from the town's god, and it's possible that years of taking PTV protected Lisa from becoming a monster as soon as the other nurses. Presumably, the liquid inside the White Chrism is also the same hallucinogenic liquid that protects against the darkness, and is used in the ceremony like the holy oil. A later note also says that during the ceremony, the whitest of wine is where it all begins. Perhaps the liquid is also drunk from the goblet. Speaking of the goblet, let's look at that next. It is specifically an obsidian goblet. Obsidian is a type of volcanic rock that has been used for centuries in the Americas. Pre-Spanish Mesoamerican cultures and Native American tribes made everything from tools and weapons to decorations and jewelry from the metal, and it was traded wildly across the country. Notice that around the stem of the goblet, there seems to be a snake circling towards the cup. The next item is Lost Memories. This green book seems to be a history of the town. It doesn't seem that magical or related to the occult, but there's another memo Maria can find in her section of game that's called Lost Memories. It has much more to do with the magic side of Silent Hill. It's possible the book contains the memo inside it and might be named for it. It's likely the memo is what's necessary for the spell because it informs the reader of how to perform it, where it's done, and with what. Specifically, it has to be done upon the hill, either referring to Silent Hill as a town, or maybe to the raised island in the middle of the lake where James goes to perform the ceremony. The beast sings during the ceremony with words of blood in the vessel of night. The performer of the ritual is named Zukilbapa, a name very close to Zukilbara, the red god. It's probably either a misspelling or another name for the same creature. The last item is the Crimson Tome, a long speech which begins with the word speak. The speaker in the book is believed to be Zukilbara given the wording. So the beast sings refers to the spellcaster reading the Crimson Tome aloud. The words of blood may mean that the speaker must drink blood from the goblet before speaking. All this tells us a few possible things about the magic: that the spell requires certain words to be said, that it must be performed in Silent Hill, most likely on the Island of Resurrection, and it requires the power of the god Zukilbara, who I believe is Valtiel. Both are associated with the color red, the power of resurrection, and are called angels by the Order's religion. Let's talk about a few other magical aspects in the second game, namely, the prison cells. There are signs of magic activity in Toluca Prison. It's implied the prison was run by or controlled by the cult, who performed rituals there with people on death row. The sect of Voltiel is the one that is most implied to be connected to them, which further reinforces the idea that Zukilbara and Voltiel are connected, since both are heavily associated with the magic in this game. In the prison cells, you can find a lot of occult books and symbols. The books are not read, only named, and while some of the names are vague, a few are somewhat revealing. First is the Angels of Mercy and Favor. The Angels of Mercy are an actual group of angels in Abrahamic faiths. Judaism says the Angels of Mercy are a group who are allowed direct access to God, a small circle that includes Uziel, Ramiel, Rachmiel, Gabriel, Michael, Zadkiel, and Zehanparu. In Islam, the Angels of Mercy ferry human souls to the Tree of Paradise to await rebirth. These are the angels associated with death and direct access to the divine, which might imply the reader was looking for that connection themselves. Next is the Feast of the Succubi. Succubi is the plural of succubus, the name of a mythic female demon who snuck into men's dreams and forced themselves upon them. While today's idea imagines a beautiful seductress, they were originally terrifying, grotesque creatures who performed, well, nastier things than I want to talk about in this video. Two interesting things tie this book to the larger Silent Hill lore. One, the succubus has a male counterpart called the incubus, the name of the final boss of Silent Hill 1. The incubus would come into women's dreams and force them into sexual situations, and the incubus boss is a monster said to be born of Alessa's dreams while trapped with God inside her. The implications are horrifying, but I don't think it's meant to be literal. Rather, the entirety of Silent Hill 1 is a metaphor about assault, where Alessa's mother forcibly impregnates her with God. The incubus as a creature is likely named this way to refer to the fact that Alessa has been violated. In all other aspects, the incubus resembles Baphomet, a demon. Historically, the Knights Templar were accused of worshipping Baphomet as a false idol, as well as homosexuality and heresy by King Philip in 1307. There's no way to know if any of that is true, but it is an early instance of the name appearing as that of a powerful demon. Back to the succubus. The second tie we have to the larger lore comes from Silent Hill 4. There's an item called the Succubus Talisman, which is used during a section of game to unlock the second set of other worlds. The image, especially from a distance, resembles the incubus. If you think about Henry and his role in the game, it's an interesting item to give him. Henry enters people's dreams trying to save them, and a succubus is also someone that enters other people's dreams, though for less noble reasons. Let's move on to our other books. There's the Tome of the Seer. A tome is usually a large scholarly book, sometimes part of a set. A seer is a soothsayer, someone with powers who can see the future. Then, there's the Manuscript of the Iron Rings. The word manuscript refers to something that is handwritten, not typed. Iron has long been associated with the occult, specifically as a material that is disliked by the supernatural and wards off demons and witches. The next book is the Chronicle of Agrippa, the only book titled with a person's name. There are a lot of historical Agrippas, but the one I think must be referenced here is Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, the only one who was a medieval theologian and occult writer who wrote on demons and magic. All these books are about magic in some way, about its history, about protection against evil, about angels and resurrection, the future, and dreams. The picture it paints is of someone researching death, the possibilities of rebirth, and the consequences. All of these books can theoretically be tied into those themes in one way or another, which makes sense given the rebirth ending. These rooms also have magic signs in them. Sadly, I have had a hard time researching them, because I have a hard time seeing them. Even with the original extracted textures with extreme contrast is hard to interpret, but what I can see we'll talk about. The first room with magic signs has a large pentacle surrounded by other symbols, and what looks like Japanese writing spread across the background. These symbols are messy, dark, and hard to read. The pentacle is the symbol in the center, a 5-pointed star inside 2 circles. It is a magic symbol that is often the basis for other symbols. The 5 points of the star represent the elements and the spirit: earth, air, fire, water, and ether, a medieval word that means, well, that. In this context, it represents the spirit, the human soul. The circles and star represent unity, the unification of the physical and the spiritual. The other symbols are somewhat vague. On the top is what could be a Leviathan cross. In medieval times, this was the symbol for sulfur in alchemy. On the top right is what possibly looks like an upside-down labarum. It was an early Christian symbol which appeared to Constantine in a dream. On the top left is what might be the reversed chemistry sign for rubber. Below that is a really wonky symbol that has some things in common with the alchemical sign for limestone. The bottom left has what might be the crucible, which represented the melting pot in ye olde chemistry. On the right side is a 3 shape that might resemble an alchemical sign that means process in wind furnace. A wind furnace was what it sounds like, a furnace that was powered by a windmill. It's hard to say what all this is supposed to mean. There's a lot of possible alchemy here That might imply it's instructions in how to make something, but so much of it is impossible to read or see, so it's guesswork at best. There's another symbol on a wall that's hard to guess at too. One definite thing it has present is the Star of Lakshmi, the symbol that is on the four corners of the image. It's a Hindu symbol for the goddess Lakshmi, who represents wealth and abundance, and is very important in multiple sects and faiths of the East, including Hinduism and Jainism. She presides over 8 forms of wealth, and those 8 forms are represented by the 8 points of the star. There are other signs that are possibly here. The small circles with circles within them look like the chemical sign for lime, while the entire circular symbol has some things in common with the alchemical symbol for saffron, but on the whole, I had trouble seeing and interpreting these images. The magic in Silent Hill is certainly unique, but none is weirder or less comprehensible than the 21 sacraments. The sacraments are a series of complex murders and magic that are supposed to allow Walter to reunite with his mother. It begins with Walter being trained to perform the spell by members of the cult, specifically George Roston. And it is said he allowed Voltiel into Walter's mind to permit the sacraments to take place. Much like the rebirth ritual, it seems Voltiel's power is required for the spell. But besides that, there's little that defines the spell or its requirements. Walter's murders are all over the place. They're random, they're planned, they're performed with axes and screwdrivers and suffocation. Serial killers typically have a type of target they go after, a method or methods of killing. Walter has a number system, and that is it. Nothing else is repeated. It would be nearly impossible for anyone to connect these killings without the numbers. They're all done to people of vastly different backgrounds who are killed in different ways, some of whom are connected to Walter, some who are complete strangers. There's also some timeline hiccups in the story. Let's examine these deaths, what they do and don't have in common, and how they possibly could have happened in one timeline. Walter is indoctrinated into the spell and has Voltiel forced into his head. In some way, this is the final straw. Beforehand, he was never violent, but here he snaps, having suffered abuse for so long, or he is some way coerced or changed by Voltiel's magic. Either way, he quickly becomes a murderer. How long there is between Voltiel entering his mind and the sacraments, we don't know. The last we know of him is he was studying at university at 19. 5 years pass before the timeline picks up again. At 24, he begins the killings. Presumably, he returned to the town in that time, having nowhere else to go, or was dragged back. His first kill is planned. Jimmy Stone is shot in the back of the head, execution style, with a gun, which screams premeditated murder. He wanted to kill Jimmy, presumably because on some level, he hates the people who were behind all the suffering of his life. Whether he consciously disapproved of the cult or the people involved is unlikely, but on some level, he must have felt a deep hatred towards these people. The next 2 victims happen back to back. It's 2 teenagers Walter wouldn't have had any knowledge of. He strangles them, a weapon he would always have on hand, and it's a very personal method of killing. These teens seek him out, wanting to learn more about the cult out of morbid curiosity, something I think Walter would find insulting and infuriating given his past. I think he snapped and killed these random children out of anger. Next is Steve Garland, someone from Walter's past. As a child, he was traumatized by him. This is premeditated murder too. He brings a submachine gun to the pet store where Steve worked and shoots the man down, killing all his animals as revenge for his past. It is likely that Walter's anger at Steve's treatment of him is misdirection, expressing his anger and pain from his entire life at a person he can actually punish. After killing Steve, Walter returns to the sports store across the way, where he was working part-time. He likely committed the crime during his shift. He tells his boss about the murder as if he'd heard about it from someone, but he uses details that are too revealing. Rick realizes what he's done, and Walter kills him, bludgeoning him with a golf club, another unplanned and unprepared murder. This is where the deaths would have to happen on the same day to make sense of the supposed timeline. Walter, perhaps unsettled from murdering his boss and possible friend, goes home to the Wish House. There he finds George Roston, who he beats to death. It's entirely likely this death happened out of luck, that Walter came upon George while he was there. At this point, he's on a roll, riding a murder high. On his way from the Wish House to his next location, he comes upon Miriam and Billy Locane outside their house, playing near the street. Seeing such innocence and carefree childhood may have triggered something in the man who had no childhood himself. He kills Billy with a single blow of his axe. Miriam is slowly dismembered. This happens mere feet from the children's parents. How they went without hearing it is hard to imagine. Walter leaves to go after his next victim, William Gregory, the watchmaker. This victim is one I can't quite make sense of, because we don't know how Walter learns about him. You see, unlike the random victims, Walter is connected to William. Years ago, William received a mysterious broken watch from a stranger who never showed back up to get it. It's implied this man was Walter's father. It is possible Walter could have beaten this information out of George Roston, who might have known about Walter's past and his family through the cult. Otherwise, just randomly happening to kill the man who met your estranged father is too coincidental. Last is Eric Walsh, the bar owner. When he hears the sports store owner Rick has been killed, he closes his bar early. But when he goes home, he finds Walter there, and he's shot in the head. Possibly after killing the watchmaker, Walter returned the way he came and saw the bar near his job was closed, realized Eric would be home alone and vulnerable, and decided to take his 10th victim. It is a lot to do in 24 hours, but I suppose Walter could have been very busy. Otherwise, it makes no sense to say that the bartender would close his bar unless somehow the killings were very close to each other. With that, the 10 heart murders are done, and the ritual of the Holy Assumption may begin. In many ways, the Holy Assumption seems like a bastardization of the rebirth ritual. Both are based upon resurrection. Both call upon Evaltiel's power, and they use the same items. But there's a major difference. The rebirth focuses on how important it is to be upon the hill, in the right place. This ritual is not in Silent Hill or on the island. It is wrong. We end up with a broken spell, with a broken outcome. Walter is not resurrected. He dies and returns as a powerful ghost. But the rebirth magic from the second game implies the person will physically return. Walter does not. But after his death, the murders continue. 10 are behind us. and there's 10 more to go. Peter Walls, a young man who smoked marijuana, was beaten to death after he claimed to see God. It's possible the God he saw was a ghostly Walter Sullivan, who out of anger at the man's claim, beats him to death. The boy also bought drugs from the cult, a connection that might have drawn Walter's eye. Next is Sharon, another person connected to the cult. Her entire family were members who attempted to make her join, but she never did. She goes to Silent Hill looking for them and finds their graves. It is at that precise moment that Walter appears and drowns her into Luca Lake. This is another murder I find somewhat odd. It requires very precise timing and makes you wonder if Walter was following her and if he waited for the precise moment she would be most heartbroken to kill her. Toby Archbold is next, one of the more interesting victims. He is also a cult member from the Mother sect, who is said to have reopened the Wish House. He dies in Mexico, pushed off a cliff to his death. It's possible that after 2 members of the cult were found murdered, Archibald realized Walter was picking them off and made an attempt to run. But once Walter was a ghost, there was nowhere to run to. This was a planned killing. Once again, Walter chased a cult member down, even outside the country, to ensure his death. Joseph Schreiber is the next victim, but we don't know how or when he died. It's possible he simply wasted away in the locked apartment and became part of Walter's other worlds as darkness took over 302. Then we have all the characters from Silent Hill 4. Cynthia is targeted because of Walter's past with her, and he angrily cuts her to pieces. Another person who is targeted for mild rudeness, misdirected anger that stems from his horrific life. Then there's Jasper, the man who escaped when his friends died, who seems to have been driven mad by it, desperate to meet the same fate, perhaps out of guilt or a desire to see his friends again. Andrew DeSalvo is then drowned. Then Richard is electrocuted. Both are punished for their cruelty towards Walter. Eileen comes next. He remembers Eileen for being kind to him, yet he cuts her apart in a painful and violent way. What we can take away from all this is that the 21 sacraments are total bullshit. Dahlia tells Walter the sacraments can bring his mother back. Then, the order members teach him how to perform it. It feels very fishy, like a trap. I believe the sacraments were created by her, that they aren't meant to resurrect anyone, and that the Holy Assumption is a twisted version of the rebirth spell meant to turn Walter into someone like Alessa, someone with the power to influence the world around him. The whole thing spreads the other world. In the bad ending, we learn that others in the apartments have died, implying the darkness has spread. Dahlia's goal seems to have been to use Walter to spread the cult's influence and the power of the other world. The spell has no rhyme or reason, no step-by-step pattern, no tasks to complete, just murder, and not in any specific way or manner or any specific people. Anyone will do. These deaths are painful, and they spread sorrow and influence the other world. It's important to remember that his body is still there. He's hung on a cross, which he couldn't have done himself. In Silent Hill 2, there's an article about Walter being arrested. It's presumably someone else. What I think happened is this. Walter used his powers to control another person to use in the ritual. He would have needed someone to nail him to the cross, someone to seal up the wall so his body wouldn't be found. An important part of the ritual seems to be keeping his body there, It doesn't seem to deteriorate. He's been dead for years, but his body has only grayed, not decomposed, and no one has complained of any smell. The spell itself involves a lot of the same things as the rebirth ending: the white chrism to anoint Walter, the obsidian goblet to drink the chrism. Instead of drinking the blood from his victims, he is connected to the hearts by IVs. Then he's hung on the cross like a religious martyr, and bleeds out or dies of starvation or dehydration. After that, there's no more ritual. He just kills people. There's no final performance or spell. I think ultimately he's been used to create more pain and power the other world. I think he realizes it by the end. The 21 Sacraments ending shows him standing in the apartment in a position that hardly looks victorious. There are plenty of other spells that we don't see much of on screen. For one, there's the magic that impregnates a person with God. We know this was done to Alessa by her own mother, and that it was prevented from completion when Alessa split her soul. What we see of the aftermath in Origins is a house fire, with Alessa's entire body burnt on the halo of the sun. The candles spread throughout the house might be the same holy candles used in Silent Hill 4. The halo is, of course, the save point of the series, an important symbol I've discussed before. In brief, we know it contains runes that read the names of Alessa and her mother, and demonic creatures as well. It has alchemical and chemical symbols, an eye that might be the all-seeing eye or a ward against evil. Now, we also know that the 3 symbols on the left, right, and bottom are related to demonology, thanks to one intrepid viewer who sent me this: a manuscript with the bottom symbol written on it. If you sent me this, please contact me so I can credit you in this video. I've yet to locate and define all these symbols, but we can surmise that the unknowns are sigils that represent various demons. It seems that the halo calls upon magical beings and connects them to Alessa and Dahlia, and uses Alessa's body in a chemical and alchemical transformation that creates God. The fire is symbolic. Fire is a symbol of transformation and rebirth, of destruction and reconstruction, and it also represents how truly painful and damaging the spell is to her. We should also discuss the save point as it is used in-game. It isn't ignored as a mechanic, it's commented on by multiple characters. Whether it's the halo or a red square, the power of the town seems to be saving the characters, reaching into their mind, in Heather's words. These red symbols are telepathic and powerful, perhaps a connection to the town that, when invoked by a person's presence, creates a bond that later can resurrect them. It's easy to say that any in-game deaths could be canonical, and that people who die in town are simply resurrected to continue their journey. This literally happens to Heather, who is dragged off by Volteal, the angel whose power is rebirth. So what have we learned about Silent Hill's magic? It is very focused on ritual and sacrifice. While we see Alessa flinging some of her power about, that seems to be defined as telepathy and psychic ability rather than magic. Silent Hill defines magic as a ritual, something performed. The only time a character simply says words that have an immediate effect is Silent Hill 3, when Heather says tu fui ego eris, and the monster instantly dies. The books of magic which contain the cult spells seem to be Lost Memories, Crimson Ceremony, 21 Sacraments, and the Crimson Tome. They aren't all related or used throughout the cult. The Crimson Tome is written by someone who disagrees with the 21 Sacraments, after all. The town's magic is rooted in alchemy, the forerunner of chemistry, which was used to try and change matter from one form to another. It makes sense because the cult is obsessed with the idea of rebirth, of being born again in a perfect paradise. They want to transform the world and themselves into something new, so why not use alchemy, which is entirely focused on transformation? There are also aspects of chemistry, which may tie into the magic. We see Heather performing a lot of scientific reactions to move forward, which act like magic rituals, perhaps implying there's some real-world logic that's used in the town's spells. The spells we see are focused upon death and rebirth, and all of them require at least blood, if not a life. The impregnation spell requires the mother to die, as we see at the end of Silent Hill 3, and the 21 sacraments requires many lives. Blood is mentioned in the rebirth ending, but presumably James doesn't kill himself to perform it. In the larger lore, we learn about a lot of convenient and supposedly natural or accidental deaths that happen in Silent Hill. The cult is likely behind them, which may mean they also have a lot of magic that is focused upon killing others. The prison was apparently controlled by them and used in rituals. Either the deaths themselves were used to power spells, or perhaps the cult resurrected these dead for one reason or another. White Claudia is rooted in the magic of the town. Many practices have important flowers and herbs, and historically, many cultures have used drugs during religious ceremonies. Whether it's Aglaophotis or White Chrism, this hallucinogen is involved in a lot of the town's power. Silent Hill is said to be a special place. Perhaps the plant that grows here absorbs its power and augments it in people. It's unknown whether only some people can use magic or not. We know that people like Alessa, Claudia, and Walter are special, with special powers, but that power is defined as two things: magic and psychic ability. Where the line is drawn is vague, but presumably anyone can perform magic rituals. James doesn't seem special after all, but psychic abilities are unique to some and may augment magic. While magic is prevalent throughout Silent Hill, like much of its other lore, the games don't reveal too much about it. What we know is divined through guesswork and inferences, but the possibilities reveal interesting things about the cult and the town that is the source of their power. Tonight, this most magic and haunting of nights, I hope you have enjoyed this video and that you will further enjoy your holiday. Happy Halloween!